I'm here today to interview Kate Burleigh, Managing Director of Intel, to discover her story from beginnings to current success at the top of an information technology giant. At the Australian Education Times, we look to recognise success and achievement, and Kate Burleigh is a perfect example of both. I'm here today with Kate Burleigh, Intel's former marketing lead and now Managing Director. Making it to the top in a business can be extremely challenging and requires hard work and knowing how to play your strengths. I can't wait to learn more about Kate Burleigh's path to becoming one of Australia and New Zealand's top women in IT. On behalf of the Australian Education Times, I welcome you once again.
Thank you.
So can you tell me about your journey from beginning to Managing Director of Intel?
Well, it's a pretty long journey, I have to say. But I didn't necessarily know I wanted to work in computers originally, but I did know I wanted to work for an international company. I was very interested in working for a multinational, and my uncle worked for IBM, and he used to always sound like he went on really exciting business trips to America. And when I was probably about your age, I used to think, wow, that sounds like a good job, getting to travel a lot for work. So I knew I wanted to probably work for an American company. That sort of made me interested in it. So, you know, it was lucky I ended up at Intel, but my goal was to work for a multinational company. And then by the time I finished school and university, this whole idea of PCs and personal computers and IT was just beginning to take off. You know, this is in the mid-90s and early 90s, mid-90s. So, you know, suddenly everyone owned a computer. So it was no longer just something that only the engineers got to do. And a whole industry was growing up in Australia. So, yeah, I started working in this industry.
During this journey, what has been your biggest challenge and how did you go about conquering that challenge?
Wow. Well, there's challenges every day, I have to say, still. You know, the challenges don't stop just because you're the managing director. But I would say the biggest challenge that we have in working at Intel is just trying to help people understand the technology, right? Because it can be quite complicated. It's a high-tech product, but we're also trying to talk to schools and educators and also general consumers who are shopping in retail shops. You know, what to look for when they're buying a computer. That's actually quite hard to take something that's very sophisticated and complicated and make it sound easy to understand so that people make the right choice. And that's one of the hardest things you have to do, take something really complicated to make it really simple. We spend a lot of our time trying to do that at Intel.
What would you say is the best part of education system in Australia and what is lacking?
Well, I think at the moment the best part with the education system in Australia is I think it's very open. Students such as yourselves get to do a lot of collaboration projects, working together, exploring ideas, so a lot of open collaborative work and thinking. I think that that's one of the strengths of the Australian school system, especially if I talk to my colleagues in China, and they'll talk about their system being much more just having to learn all the numbers and, you know, rote learning. And so that's really good too, but I think, you know, that idea of open collaborative learning suits our style. It means that we end up with students who graduate who have very creative minds and they're not afraid to try new and different ways of thinking, right? And I think that's good. Flip side, I think one of the more negative things is probably we're not focusing as much as I'd like to see on the subjects like science, technology, engineering and maths. There's a lot of focus on humanities-based subjects, which is very important, but it will be good to see more balance on some of the other subjects that help us get the next generation of engineers or inventors who might go on to work for a company like Intel or maybe go on to create the next company like Intel. Wouldn't that be great to see in Australia?
What do you think of the role of technology currently in the classroom, and how do you think this will change to benefit student life in learning?
Well, I think the role of technology in the classroom shouldn't just be limited to the computer lab. Right, and I think it's really nice that's changed, but it's we're seeing now computers in all parts of learning, so it's not just for the sort of geeky science class or the geeky computer club, right? That's really important, but also, you know, how can an English teacher use it to make textbooks sound more interesting, you know, by accessing dynamic content that students can look at, or how can we use it to learn about 3D objects using different sort of mapping technology. So In geography, you know, you can open up all sorts of different ways of exploring the world and the environment around us, for example. So what excites me the most is the ability for all teachers to actually embrace computer technology, not as a computer itself, but as what it can enable in the teaching. And we do a lot of work actually at Intel in working with the teachers on training them and educating them around how they can use computers in their classroom as well, which we get some really good feedback on.
Tell us a bit about Intel's education program, its contribution to the community, and future goals of improving education.
Well, we really are very focused on, if we don't have that next generation of students coming up with a passion for computing and innovation, then, you know, we might just stop where we are, right, which no one wants to see, you know. And I think that human nature is we want to continue on to improve and come up with new ideas and better ways of doing things, not just with computers, but in life in general, right? So Intel's focus is very much on how do we use computing technology to enrich the lives of every person on the planet. And it's very much our goal. And so then we look at, well, what's our role in that and how can we do that? And starting with computers in the classroom or tablets, how can people integrate them as learning tools to improve our education is very important to Intel.
What is your educational background and how has that helped you with your career? What are the key factors required to be successful?
Wow, well, okay, this is just my opinion, so I'm not always going to be right, but this is my experience. I went to 6 different schools, 3 different primary schools, 3 different high schools, plus I went to school, a full school in America for a year. So, you know, that was a lot of school. And sometimes it wasn't very good changing schools because, you know, it's hard, you have to make new friends and get to know new teachers. But the upside was it taught me to be quite resilient and quite used to change. And I had an ability to sort of walk in and make new friends, and I wasn't scared to do that. And that serves you well in business because every day in business you're coming up with meeting new customers, new engineers, discussing new opportunities, and you have to be really good with people when you're in business. So I think that in a way, not that it was deliberate, but in moving all those different schools, it actually helped me grow as a person. Education, for my actual formal education, I went to Sydney University and I enrolled originally in a Bachelor of Arts degree doing political science and fine arts. So you can tell from that I liked arts and I also liked political science and history, so I didn't really know what I wanted to do. But I thought that was a good place to start, to just get a nice broad base of knowledge. And then I got my first job starting to work in business, and that's when I realised that I really enjoyed business. So I went back to university part-time while I was working and did my master's degree in business and marketing.
How did your non-profit work at organisations such as Red Cross help you prepare for the industry you work in now?
Actually, it helped me prepare a lot. I mean, I was really lucky at Red Cross because I was quite inexperienced actually when I first started. It was my first job after university. And because they didn't have a lot of staff, you got to do a whole lot of stuff, which is the best way to learn, right? And so it was lucky for me because I got to be responsible for doing a lot of the media work, a lot of the press releases, a lot of the fundraising strategy. Even though I didn't really have all the answers myself, I was just learning, but I got to learn very fast. So that was good. It also taught me to be really open-minded about, I guess, people in Australia and worldwide who aren't born into as much privilege as us. And I think that you know, really heightens your ability to understand it's not just all about business and making money and hitting your targets and goals, but also making sure that you're enriching the lives of people. No matter what business you work in, you don't have to work in the non-profit sector just to make sure that you're compassionate in how you look at other people in the world.
As you hold a position of great responsibility, what would your advice be to someone who is or is hoping to be a leader of some sort?
My advice is to be prepared to take risks with your career. You know, even if you don't feel that comfortable with maybe a job, you think, oh, but I don't think I'll be good at that. Probably there's 5 or 10 other people who maybe offered that job and they're probably thinking, I don't think I'll be good at that too. But if someone's talking to you about trying that new job, it's because they see potential in you. And so you should trust people when they see potential with you and take some risks with your career. And usually that will pay off if I use my own example, I would have thought, I'm not a very technical person, I'm not an engineer. So if you'd asked me 15 years ago, do you think that you're going to run Intel one day? I probably would have thought, no, I'm not going to. But then, of course, I realised as I got involved with the company, all the different avenues there were and the different types of strengths I was looking in people, that in fact it was actually a really good career aspiration. So anything can be possible, for sure, but you have to take a few risks along the way to really succeed.
Yeah. What is a typical day like for a managing director?
Lots of meetings. I try and divide my day up between 1/3 external meetings where I'm talking to customers, speaking with the industries, maybe speaking with the education department or educators. So speaking to people who are using our technology, so I understand what they're thinking, what they're feeling, and how else we can support their needs. I'd spend another 1/3 of my day in internal meetings, speaking to my staff, understanding what their challenges are, maybe learning from them about some of their successes and areas that I can support their needs for. And then the other 1/3 of my day is spent on keeping myself educated. Okay, and that sounds like, wow, you know, surely you must know all the answers, but in IT it just moves so fast and there's so many new concepts for us to understand that I have to spend a lot of my time keeping up to speed, keeping educated about not just the new products that Intel's innovating around, but what else is the rest of the industry doing.
What advice or words of wisdom would you like to give to any of our readers who to have a successful career, and for those who are interested for a career in IT?
My definite advice would be to keep up focused on your STEM-based subjects. They're really important, but try and keep a bit of a balance around that creative thinking and problem solving as well. So pick the subjects that keep that balance. Because in IT it's a lot to do with problem solving. Okay, this is what we want to achieve, how can technology help us do that? So pick the subjects can help you sort of exercise both sides of your brain, for sure. That would be my advice for IT. I think that in general, if people want to go into a general management position, and that's what I am, I sort of look across a broad range of different divisions and manage them. I would say be prepared to work in many different roles, okay, and move around a lot. I started off working in retail roles. I've moved to enterprise sales roles and marketing roles. I've done lots of different jobs within the company, and that's helped me understand more about, you know, different facets within the large organisation. The third one probably will be prepared to travel, because the world is becoming more globalised. And the way we work in multinational companies is not everything happens in Australia. A lot of stuff happens outside of Australia, but we bring that knowledge to Australia. By the same token, there's Australians who have great talent and knowledge, and they're in demand to go and work overseas as well. So I think also having a very global view of the world will help future candidates.
Thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you for your time and words of wisdom. I'm sure that our readers will be inspired and motivated by your kind advice.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure.